Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Ruchim Abayim. We're continuing in Berura Daf Hashavua. I want this to be a continuation of, we began Siman Kuf Aleph yesterday. Siman Kuf Aleph is a critical Siman, where the Mechaber said someone who davens needs to have Kavana in all the brachos. And if you can't have Kavana in all of them, at least you should be Mechaber in Avos. The Biur Halacha, the first Biur Halacha says, what do you mean you have to be mechavein in the whole Shemone Esrei? Isn't there opinion in Siman Samach mitzvahs ein tzrichos kavana? So according to the opinion mitzvahs ein tzrichos kavana, why would you have to have kavana by the whole Shemone Esrei? By the way, the Shulchan Aruch paskins mitzvahs tzrichos kavana. The psak of the Shulchan Aruch is mitzvahs tzrichos kavana, which means if you sat in a sukkah and you didn't have kavana, you didn't do anything. Rav Zalman even says it could be you ate out of the sukkah, because since you weren't yotzei the mitzvah, you were not eating in a sukkah. Or let's say you put on tzitzis and you weren't mechavein. Not only do you not get the mitzvah of tzitzis, maybe you also wore a beged of dalet kanfos without wearing tzitzis. That's Rav Zalman. But that's the kasha of Biur Halacha. What about according to the opinion mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana? Says Biur Halacha, the first Biur Halacha, that the inyan of mitzvahs tzrichos or ein tzrichos kavana is that's a specific kavana to be yotzei the mitzvah. But over here, the question is, did you have kavana for the meaning of the words? The only thing is here the Biur Halacha throws in a monkey wrench. He says, Ma she'ein kein bezed inyanahu shaloi yechavein bedvarim acherim be'es hatfilah. It's not only you need to think about the meaning of the words, it's also that you cannot be thinking about other things. Okay, so this is a new inyan that we were never madgish before. It's not enough to say, Baruch, he's a source of blessing. Oh, by the way, what do I have to do later? Ata, you. Oh, what's for breakfast today? Hashem, Adon Kol. If you're mechavin for other things, that's also called not having kavana. You can't divert your mind to other things. That's a shita Biur Halacha. Rav Moshe has a tshuva. That means, even if you're mechavin purest hamilos, you also can't divert your mind to other subjects. He says, "Umashim v'loshen harajba mu beises le'el b'siman samgim dermas chasav tiyesh lizaher ba'avos shaloi yehei libay paina be'emsa brachal dvar machim." One should be careful in avos not to allow the mind to divert to other matters. Va'afilu im be'esh sheyomer achar kach hatevos shal bracha yachsav yichavin. Even if I then go and say the word and have kavanah for the word. But if in between the words my mind was thinking about other things, that is a issue with kavanah. That's what the Raja is mashma. You could declare, maybe you wouldn't even be yotzei b'di'eved. For sure, says Biur Halacha, for sure, l'chadchila, you need to be very careful that when you say avos, you don't think about other things. Are you yotzei b'di'eved? There's what to talk about. There's what to talk about.
How is avos different than the other brachos?
Because kavana is ma'akev in avos. Kavana is not ma'akev in other brachos, but kavana is ma'akev by avos. So if your mind diverted during avos, there's a tzad that b'di'eved might be an issue. It sounds like, the Chavetz Chaim is not going so far as to say definitively that you're not yotzei, but there's what to talk about. And I think this is a chiddush that nobody knows. I don't think anybody knows that during avos, you're not allowed to let your mind wander. How to do that? I don't know. I'm just a reporter over here. I'm just here to tell you the facts.
I mean, why the pause it? Pause from saying the word.
It doesn't just mean to pause. It means, one second. It means you have to have a certain level of awareness when you're saying the words. You have to have a certain level of focus. You can't be, drifting off. Yeah, if you pause in the middle, that's an issue, and even if you don't pause in the middle, you can't be drifting off. So that's the first chiddush. Next chiddush, the Mishna that we saw yesterday, a few things. We saw yesterday that besides the bracha of Avos, there are poskim that hold also Moedim is considered like Avos, and therefore l'chadchila one has to have Kavana by Moedim. And we saw from the Stipler that if you didn't have Kavana by Avos, b'di'evet, perhaps the way to rectify that is to have Kavana by Moedim. What if somebody gets up to daven and he doesn't think he could have Kavana for Avos, and the Zman Tefillah will pass? Reb Chaim Kanievsky says the minhag is to daven anyway. We'll have to see about that, whether you're really allowed to do that or not. Now, one more thing before we see the next Biur Halacha. The Kayyadam writes that since, right, look back in the Mechaber. The Mechaber says if you're not Mecham by Avos, you have to go back and daven again. It says Rama, we don't do that anymore. Why? Because likely you're not going to have Kavana the second time. So the question is, so what do you do now? You said Avos and you didn't have Kavana. So you're not going to daven again because you won't have Kavana the second time. But should you continue on? Your davening is meaningless. You're not being yotzei. In other words, if you didn't have Kavana by Avos and you realize by Ata Gibar, what do? You can't go back, you won't have Kavana the second time. You can't daven more because it's a bracha levatala. So the Mishna says that if you remembered before you said Baruch Atah Hashem, then you go back to Elokei Avraham. Meaning you say, if you remembered before you said Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham, you go back to the words Elokei Avraham. Now I'm not sure why that helps. What if a person didn't have kavanah for the first words of Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoseinu? So now what? But it seems like it would be okay to go back to Elokei Avraham. But the real issue here is like this. The guy remembered in Shemone Esrei, he didn't have Kavana by Avos. So maybe he should just, call it a day. How do you go on and say additional brachos when you're not Yotzei Shemone Esrei? L'chayra, it's a bracha levatala. So look in the Biur Halacha v'ha idna. Nowadays we don't go back. By the way, let's look at the previous Biur Halacha. The previous Biur Halacha says, what if you have a Shliach Tzibor who is clearly not having Kavana? How do we know he's not having Kavana? He doesn't know Hebrew. There's no way the guy has Kavana or the guy's saying it so fast that there's no way he's having Kavana. Is that okay? So the Biur Halacha says, it could be by a shatz, b'di'evet, it helps, even though he doesn't know what he's saying. That's what it's Machon Siman and Gimel, or maybe there it's talking about where at least he had Kavana by Avos. Now, why would a shatz be able to get away with not having Kavana? Maybe because Shomea Ka'oina. And the Shomea knows the meaning of the words. However, the Pri Megadim holds that if Ruvain is saying the bracha and he doesn't know what he's talking about, Shemone will never be yotzei, even though Shemone is having Kavana. So, therefore, the Biur Halacha says the only way it could work by a shatz is if the shatz has Kavana by Avos. If you know a guy's getting up to the Amma, this guy has yahrzeit, and he's a chveis. He's praying. He thinks that a yahrzeit is you're praying for the soul in the purgatory. Nobody ever told him that when he says Avos, he's not praying for the soul in the purgatory. He doesn't even know what the words mean. You can't put him up there. He's not a daven. Can't put him up can't let him daven. First of all, he's bringing the soul to the purgatory, because now the soul was in level 6 in the purgatory. Now it's going deeper because he didn't teach his kid how to daven. He can't go up. He can't go up. How could he go up? He's not a daven. What could you rely on to let a guy go up to the Amud if he doesn't know what he's talking about? Maybe the first opinion in the Biur Halacha? I don't know. That's a very tough question. If you have a guy who's going to get up and he doesn't know the meaning of Avos, I don't know about that one. Okay, but here's the big question. What about a regular guy? He didn't have Kavana and Avos. Now what does he do? Says the Biur Halacha, Idna ein chayzer. Nowadays we don't go back. L'chayr kavanasai im siyeh mashmone Esrei v'loy kivein ba'avos. L'chayr, this means if a guy finished Shemone Esrei and he didn't have Kavana by Avos. Aval im oimed eitzel ata gibar. But if a guy's up to ata gibar, v'nizkar shlo kivein ba'avos, and remember he didn't have Kavana by Avos, kivein the mitzad adin lo yatzav. If he's not yotze Shemone Esrei, heich noimar loy sheyavarich oid bracha shal yotze b'hem. How could you tell him, okay, weiter? You know? It's like when the guy, the Bal Koire, he made a mistake. He read the wrong word. Everyone says, gezakt. What do you mean gezakt? So now, when are you going to be Yotze Kriyas HaTorah? Next year? You have to wait till next year to be Yotze the Kriya? So what are we supposed to tell this guy? He didn't say the bracha. How can you go further? Because it's likely he won't have come on the second time. So we say, it's okay. Say more brachos I don't understand that. If he goes weiter, he's vaday saying a bracha levatal. If he starts again, he's maybe saying a bracha levatal. So I would say, tell the guy he shouldn't daven today. That's my eitzah. If the guy didn't have kavana by avos, he should just call it a day. Meaning the guy has three options. Either one option is start again and maybe he'll say bracha levatala. Option 2 is continue and vaday say bracha levatala. Option 3 is not daven. L'chayr, option 3 is the best one. That's the kasha of the Biur Halacha. Kain hayanirali. That's what it would seem to me. In other words, the Biur Halacha is saying the guy needs to start over. If you remember, in middle of Shemone Esrei, you didn't have Kavana by Avos, says the Chavetz Chaim, you must start over. You have to daven again. The din that we don't go back is only if you remembered when you're up to Tachnun. But if you remember in the middle of Shemone Esrei, of course you have to go back. Otherwise, how can we tell the guy to continue on and say a bracha levatala? That's what it would seem to me. Says the Biur Halacha, "Avam midivrei chay adam klal chav dal din beis mashma de einoi chayzer afilu oimed eitzel atagibar." My opinion is, say it again. Chay adam is mashma, you don't say it again. Says the Chavetz Chaim, I have another eitzah. You know what you do? V'yoyser nirli eitzah acheres ba'ofen zeh shelo yoymar oid ata klal. Stop where you are. You're up to atagibar, stop where you are. Wait until the Shliach Tzibur gets up to Ata Gibar, v'yamtin al hashatz, sheyoymer berachas avos, the shatz will say avos, v'yichavein lotzis, have in mind to be yotzei, u'sheyagia hashatz berachas Ata Gibar, yascha ba'atzmai. You hear this brilliant solution? If you are having a bad day and you blew avos, you stop where you're up to, you listen to the Shliach Tzibur say avos, and after he says avos, you continue with Ata Gibar. That's what the Biur Halacha says to do. You ever see someone do that? Nobody would ever admit they didn't have Kavana by avos. But that's what you need to do. You need to stop where you are, be yotzei avos with the Shliach Tzibur, and be yotzei, and then you continue. Yes, right. The guy, it can't be the guy who's davening for the soul to be rescued from the abyss. By Shemone Esrei, here. So here's the thing: why can't I be yotzei the whole Shemone Esrei with the Shliach Tzibur? The answer is you can't be yotzei Shemone Esrei with the shatz, because the shatz can only be motzei mi she'enoi baki. So you ask, so how could he be motzei me in avos? Legabe avos, I'm not a baki because I messed it up. I have no choice. So the Biur Halacha is of the opinion that if you blew avos, you wait where you are, you listen to the chazan. L'chayra, what if I remembered in V'lam al Shinim that I blew avos? L'chayra, then you listen to the shatz say avos. You listen to him say all the brachos until then, and then you continue by V'lam al Shinim. L'chayra, the same thing, even though the Biur Halacha is not referring to that, but you can't go back now and say those brachos. You can't go back.
Why?
Well, if you can't say Avos, you certainly can't say the other brachos.
Well, obviously not going to the but the other ones aren't.
No.
Go back to before.
Why? So then, why can't the Biur Halacha didn't say you go back and say Avos? That's not an option because you'll probably not have Kavana the second time.
Right, but the other ones after Gibor.
Yeah, but once I said Avos, we're not going to tell you to say that again.
So if you forget Yal V'Yavai, then you go back, right?
Well, if you forget Yal V'Yavai, the Biur Halacha says in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, the Biur Halacha says you forgot Yal V'Yavai and you didn't finish your tefillah, wait until the shots gets to Ritzei and listen to him. You hear that? You forgot Yal V'Yavai, you wait until the shots gets to Ritzei. Now why is that better? If you have to go back, say it yourself. It sounds like it's better not to say it yourself, no? So I would say the same thing if you remember that in Mil V'Lam Al-Shinim that you forgot Avos, L'chayra, you wait until you let the shots say what you already said. Like, we don't want you to say something twice. That's what it seems like from there. By the way, this is the opinion of the Chafetz Chaim. In other words, if you ask the Chafetz Chaim, what should a guy do if he finished Shemone Esrei and he didn't have Kavana in Avos? Don't go back. What if he's up to Ata Gibar? Then the best thing to do is wait there and say the first bracha with the shots and then say by yourself. And what if he forgot by Marav? What would the Biur Halacha say? I think he would say, you have to go back. That's what he writes. Not I think he would say. That's what he says. He says you have to go back. No. Okay, he says this is my opinion, and the Chai Adam's not mashing that way. I'm telling you what the Chafetz Chaim would say. If you ask the Chafetz Chaim, what should you do? Today, if the Chafetz Chaim walked into the room, and you realize by Marav, I didn't have Kavana by Avos, the Chafetz Chaim would say, and again, you're not, if you already finished Shemone Esrei, you don't go back. I'm in the middle of Shemone Esrei, and I realized that I didn't have Kavana by Avos, and the Chafetz Chaim walked into the room, so you could ask him in the middle of Shemone Esrei, he would say to go back.
And then they would tell you that Chai Adam says
No,
no.
he
says that here.
yeah, he's pointing out the Chai Adam is not masha that, but he says Kei Nir Ali. He's not. He's not backing down. Now, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman argues on this whole thing. You know this? Rabbi Shlomo Zalman argues on this whole thing. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says a chiddush nifla.
The Chafetz Chaim is, how's he different from the Ramah says?
Yeah.
Says that don't go back. So he's just saying like,
Because no, the Chafetz Chaim is not arguing on the Ramah. Listen carefully. The Ramah is talking about when you finish the Shemone Esrei. So Ramah says if you finish Shemone Esrei, don't go back because chances are you won't say it with Kavana a second time. You might, can't take a chance. But says the Chafetz Chaim, that is only if you finish Shemone Esrei. But if I'm in the middle of Shemone Esrei, now what are you going to tell me? Not to go back? So what should I do? Say brachos weiter? They will definitely be a bracha v'atala. At least if I go back, maybe I'll get it right. So the Chafetz Chaim is saying the din of the Ramah is only if you finish the Shemone Esrei, is not if you're in middle of the Shemone Esrei. He does say Chai Adam is not mashon that way, but he does say Kein Hayan Nir Ali. And l'chayra by Mariv, maybe it would come out that he would say, that's what I would say, that you have to go back if you're in middle of Shemone Esrei. The Stipler and Rav Shlomo Zalman have a chiddush nifla, and that is there are two dinim. There's a din of tefillah bekavana, and there's a din of tefillah. If I didn't say avos with kavana, am I yotzei davening? No, I wasn't yotzei. So you'll say, so how could I continue on with my Shemone Esrei? It's a bracha levatala. No, it's not a bracha levatala. It's a bracha without kavana. It's a tefillah without kavana, but it's not levatala. Meaning they're answering the Chavetz Chaim's kasha. Chavetz Chaim's kasha is, so now what? A guy didn't have kavana by Avos. So we're saying, don't go back because probably the second time I won't have kavana. But what's the alternative? To go weiter and it should be a bracha levatala? Says Rav Shlomo Zalman. No, it's not a bracha levatala. Not a bracha levatala. I'm praying to the Lord. I have no kavana. I'm still davening. I'm not yotzei, but it's still a tefillah. So I'm allowed to continue on. That is the opinion of the Stipler. That is the opinion of Rav Shlomo Zalman. It's not a bracha levatala. It has a din of tefillah. It's just chaser bekavana. So therefore, if, let's say, a guy, we saw earlier, they asked Rav Chaim Gyasi, the guy is mavulbul, he's discombobulated, he knows he's not going to have kavanah by Avos, should he daven? Yeah. The minhag is he davens. Why? I don't think the Chavetz Chaim would say to daven. I personally would think the Chavetz Chaim would say not to daven. And I think the Chavetz Chaim would say if you're middle of Shemone Esrei, and it's Mariv, and you didn't have kavanah by Avos, you got to go back. But Rav Stipler and Rav Chaim and Rav Shlomo Zalman, they say you could continue. It has a din tefillah. It's just chasar kavana, and therefore they say you're mekayim a mitzvah. The Stipler adds that the Beis Elokim writes that there's a mitzvah to say the words even though you're not mechavein. But where I come from, ein lanu ela divrei Mishna Berura, and halacha l'maisa, we would say that if you're in Mariv and you didn't have Kavana by Avos and you're middle Shemone Esrei, would we say to go back? We would say, yeah, the Chavetz Chaim says to go back. Could you rely on Rav Shlomo Zalman? You could rely on Rav Shlomo Zalman.
And the second time you didn't have, how many times can you go back?
Let's say the second time you didn't have Kavana either.
You had the first time.
And so again, if you finish Shemone Esrei, you're good. But you remembered in the middle of Shemone Esrei. You're in the middle of Shemone Esrei, and it's the third time you tried and it didn't work. Then I would say not to go back. I'll tell you why. Because the svar of the Chavetz Chaim is, you can't vaday say brachas levatala at the expense of starting again and only maybe ain't suffing much v'dei vaday. But this guy is vaday going to be saying bracha levatala if he goes back. So a guy who's vaday, he's better off saying only 16 more bracha levatalas than saying 19 bracha levatalas. So if a guy, after a few times, every single time, we say, pal, you're going to do much better by saying vaday 16 bracha levatalas than 19 bracha levatalas. And anyway, in that case, you'll rely on Rav Shlomo Zalman. For sure. That for sure you can rely on Rav Shlomo Zalman.
Did the Chavetz Chaim himself say more than once that we don't have Kavana today?
Yeah, but that does not apply for all halachas. In other words,
It was talking about Mishna in that statement because it was talking about when if somebody that was drinking,
yeah. So let's say legabe maybe drinking. We would not say that for avos. In other words, this din that we don't have so much kavana anyway. It's not just like an automatic license to not. It doesn't apply for everything. It would not apply here according to Chavetz Chaim. It's very late, but let's start Beis. I'm sorry, because otherwise, this was still yesterday. Beis, lo yispalo b'libay levad. Do not daven in your heart alone. Ela mechatech hadvarim b'svasav. You have to enunciate the words with your lips. Umashmiya la'aznav. You need to hear it with your ears. B'lachash, quietly. V'lo yashmiya kolai, without your voice being heard. One Mishna Berura. Umashmiya v'yesh shekasu tzarch lachash l'divrei hazoyar. Sha'af l'charchil lo yashmiya la'aznav. Some say you need to be choishesh for the Zohar, that your own ears should not be able to hear it. Meaning, the Zohar doesn't say that you don't emit any sound. The Zohar just holds that you say the words so quietly that your own ear doesn't hear it. However, the Shulchan Aruch says you have to hear it with your ears. Aval Magen Avram kasav she'ein raya mizar. Magen Avram says that's not necessarily what the Zohar means. V'chein kasav be'agra da'af das hazohar hu kashulchan aruch v'chein kasav shari achronim shetoiv yoytzel l'charchila she'yashmiel la'aznav. I'm sorry to say that 9 out of 10 people do not say Shemone Esrei loud enough that their own ear hears it. Just simple, straight up halacha. Most people are not saying Shemone Esrei where their own ear is hearing it. they're whispering, their own ear is not hearing it. Everyone agree that if you said it so quietly that your own ear doesn't hear it, you're still yotzei b'diavad. If you don't emit any sound at all, you're not yotzei. So most people are saying, are whispering, whether it's loud enough that their own ear could hear, usually not. So you have to be zahir in that. Rabbi Yisai, have an amazing day. Well, we're picking up tomorrow, okay? Hatzlacha Rabbah.